The arrival of the unlikely recruit. Personal log Commander Krax, head combat instructor at Centaur Military Academy. Date, Standard Galactic Year 3457. As I paced across my office aboard Space Station Atlas 7, I couldn't shake the feeling that the High Command had lost their minds. The pristine metal walls reflected my agitation, and my secondary arms twitched with frustration. My third eye kept darting to the stack of transfer orders on my desk, each bearing the seal of the Galactic Defense Force. Let me tell you something about humans, they look ridiculous. No protective exoskeleton, no secondary limbs, their bones are pure calcium, not even reinforced with proper metals like every other sentient species. When the integration order came through, I thought it was a practical joke from my old Academy buddy Admiral KNX, but no, here I stood in my state-of-the-art training facility, preparing to welcome the first batch of recruits to the most prestigious combat training program in the galaxy. The Centaur Military Academy had produced the finest warriors across 12 galaxies for over 10,000 years. Our graduates commanded battleships that could shatter planets, our combat specialists had ended wars before they began. But now, we were expected to train humans? Commander Krax, Lieutenant PX interrupted my brooding. The human transport has cleared final decontamination. I flicked my primary antenna in acknowledgement. Wonderful. Did they remember to pack their gravity compensators, or should we reduce our standard 3G environment to accommodate their fragile forms? PX's scales shifted to an embarrassed purple. Sir, they declined the gravity compensation offers. They what? I stopped pacing, my ridged spines rising in surprise. Do they have a death wish? Even the Carrick use compensators in our training facilities. The transport's arrival alert echoed through the station. Through the reinforced viewing panels, I watched as the sleek vessel docked with our primary bay. It looked comically small next to our standard troop carriers. The humans had adapted one of their civilian ships for military transport, claiming it was more, what was their word? Cost-effective. Gather the current class, I ordered PX. Let them see what the High Command has saddled us with. And make sure Medical Base 6 is prepped. I give these humans 2 hours before the gravity starts crushing their primitive cardiovascular systems. As I made my way to the docking bay, my mind wandered to the briefing files. The human military had achieved some minor victories in their sector, mostly against pirate bands and rogue mining operations, but this was Centaur Academy. We trained warriors who could punch through battleship armor with their bare hands. The integration program was supposed to strengthen diplomatic ties between Earth and the Galactic Alliance. In my opinion, we should have sent them some basic defense technology and called it a day. But no, some bright spark in command thought actual integration would show goodwill. The docking bay doors slid open with a satisfying hiss, and my current class of cadets assembled, 40 of them representing the finest species the galaxy had to offer, tall, proud Andorians with their silicon-based muscle structures, graceful Nexar whose neural processing speed made them living weapons, even a pair of Brontarians radiating gravitational energy. Attention! My voice echoed across the bay as the cadets snapped to perfect formation, their various anatomies aligned with military precision. Today marks a historic moment. The first human recruits join our ranks. You will observe their capabilities, you will assess their weaknesses, and you will remember that High Command, in its infinite wisdom. The airlock cycled, and my words died in my throat as the first human stepped through. The entire assembly went silent, and I heard distinct clicking sounds as multiple cadets activated their visual enhancement feeds to ensure they were seeing correctly. Standing before us, without any visible life support or gravity compensation equipment, was what appeared to be the most unimpressive bipedal creature I had ever seen. And this? This was supposed to be the future of galactic military cooperation? A headache began building in all 3 of my brains. This was going to be a very long training cycle. The human stood at attention as I forced myself to begin the standard identification protocol. State your name and prior military affiliation for the record. Marcus Bennett, sir, he replied clearly. United Earth Defense Force, 7th Orbital Division. His voice carried across the docking bay without strain from our enhanced gravity, a small point in his favor. I circled him, noting his measurements against our standard recruitment parameters: height, abysmally inadequate; muscle mass, barely registering on our scanners; bone density, well, at least it was within minimal acceptable ranges for space travel. Tell me, Bennett, I said, letting my secondary arms perform standard threat assessment gestures, did your superiors explain the physical requirements of our program? Yes, sir, he replied evenly. Behind him, Cadet Rexus, a crystalline Andorian specialist, covered his primary breathing pore with what passed for a snicker, while several other cadets displayed similar signs of amusement. The Brontarians had activated their gravitational fields, likely betting on how long before this human collapsed under our training conditions. At ease, I commanded more out of curiosity than protocol. The human shifted his stance smoothly without showing any signs of distress. Medical monitors built into the docking bay floor reported normal vital signs for a human anyway. Perhaps we should give our new friend a demonstration of standard training protocols, Rexus suggested with a hint of mischief in his voice. I recognized that tone. Every cycle there were always cadets eager to establish dominance early on. Usually, I discouraged such behavior, but today, I was curious. Proceed, I said reluctantly. Rexus launched into his combat sequence. His movements were so fast they became a blur beyond normal visual tracking speeds. Yet there stood Marcus Bennett, watching quietly with an expression that remained unchanged throughout Rexus's performance. When he finished his display, Rexus seemed taken aback by Bennett's calm demeanor. Impressive display, Bennett remarked after observing Rexus's energy conservation techniques during his final sequence. A murmur rippled through our assembled cadets. Confusion played across their faces as they exchanged glances filled with disbelief. Perhaps our human friend would like to demonstrate his own combat capabilities now, suggested Cadet Zara, a Nexar whose tentacles writhed with barely contained mirth. This was going to be entertaining. Bennett. Combat stance. I commanded. The human moved into position, a stance that seemed wrong by all accounts yet somehow felt balanced, as if he had placed every piece deliberately upside down in some cosmic puzzle. Request permission to access full gravity controls, he said after observing our training floor's setup. Denied. I snapped back sharply. Those controls are reserved for advanced training scenarios only. He nodded without protest but maintained that same calm demeanor throughout our intake procedures, assignments and schedules, all while absorbing information efficiently like a sponge soaking up water amidst an impending storm. Finally concluding our orientation session, I announced one last tradition: new recruits must select their training partners for this cycle. Bennett, I warned him as he scanned through his options carefully, choose wisely, your survival may depend on it. His eyes scanned over the assembled cadets until he finally spoke up: I would like to request Cadet Rexus as my primary training partner. Laughter erupted throughout the bay, a cacophony of disbelief and amusement at his audacity to challenge one of our top combat specialists right from day one. You want to train with Rexus? One cadet exclaimed incredulously while another added mockingly, good luck keeping up. As they filed out towards their quarters afterward, I couldn't shake off an odd feeling about this human recruit named Marcus Bennett. Something told me this wouldn't be just another ordinary training cycle after all. The first training session. Personal Log Commander Krax, Head Combat Instructor at Centaur Military Academy. Date, Standard Galactic Year 3457. The first training session of the human recruit, Marcus Bennett, was underway, and I stood at the edge of the training arena, observing the spectacle unfold. My mind raced with a mixture of disbelief and curiosity. The other cadets had already formed their opinions, most of them leaning towards mockery. Yet, I sensed something unusual about Bennett, an underlying tenacity that defied his unimpressive appearance. Weapon drills. I barked, trying to shake off my unease. Standard issue plasma rifles. 10 rounds on moving targets. The holographic targets materialized in a flurry of lights and sounds, designed to challenge even our most skilled warriors. Each cadet stepped forward, eager to showcase their abilities. Rexus, with his crystalline physique, was the first to take aim. His rifle was an extension of himself. He fired with precision that left no room for error. The targets exploded in bursts of light as he hit each one effortlessly. "Watch and learn, human," Rexus called out, his tone dripping with condescension. Bennett stepped forward next, and I watched as he struggled to hold the rifle correctly. His 2 arms fumbled with controls meant for 4, the neural interface sparked and fizzled in protest against his primitive nervous system. I could see the laughter ripple through the assembled cadets as Bennett took aim. His first shot went wide, missing the target completely. The second barely grazed the outer ring. By the 5th shot, snickers had turned into outright laughter. "Perhaps we should give him a slingshot instead," Zara suggested, her tentacles rippling with amusement. Bennett finished his round with only 2 hits within scoring range, the worst performance I'd seen in 20 cycles of training. My frustration grew as I watched him take a deep breath and step back from the firing line. "Hand-to-hand combat," I announced, trying to regain control of the session. "Partner sparring. No augmentations. No gravity manipulation." Rexus stepped onto the mat, his crystalline form settling into a perfect combat stance that radiated confidence. Bennett stood opposite him, assuming that same peculiar stance from our earlier encounter, the one that felt wrong yet somehow balanced. "Begin," I commanded. Rexus moved first, launching a traditional Andorian strike pattern, fast, precise, and overwhelming. Bennett stepped aside effortlessly. It was as if he anticipated Rexus's every move. The crystalline warrior's momentum carried him forward into an unbalanced position. He recovered quickly and launched into a secondary attack sequence. Bennett continued to evade without launching any counterattacks. His movements were fluid but lacked aggression. He seemed to be playing a game of avoidance rather than engaging in combat. "Stand and fight, coward," Rexus growled, frustration evident in his dulled form. "I am fighting," Bennett replied calmly, still sidestepping Rexus's attacks with an efficiency that was maddeningly effective but infuriatingly passive. The sparring session ended with neither cadet scoring a decisive hit. Rexus couldn't land a solid blow despite his superior strength and speed. Bennett never launched a counterattack. The arena fell silent as I considered what I had just witnessed. "Pathetic," I announced loudly to break the tension. "You both have much to learn about combat." As my words echoed through the arena, I felt my confusion deepen regarding this human recruit. He had shown remarkable endurance during the endurance protocols earlier but failed miserably in weapon drills and hand-to-hand combat. What was he hiding? Was there more to this human than met the eye? After dismissing the cadets for their break period, I retreated to my office to analyze Bennett's performance further. My mind raced through possibilities. Was he simply outmatched by our advanced training methods? Or was there something deeper at play? I pulled up Bennett's medical readings from earlier. They showed stable vital signs throughout all exercises, a feat not easily achieved under such conditions for any recruit, let alone a human new to our gravity levels. It was puzzling. He should have been struggling far more than he appeared to be. As I contemplated these thoughts, PX entered my office without knocking, a breach of protocol that usually warranted reprimand but today felt justified given my current state of mind. "Commander," PX began hesitantly, "I've been reviewing Marcus Bennett's background." I leaned back in my chair, intrigued despite myself. "And?" "He has an extensive history in Earth martial arts," PX continued. "His records indicate training in various disciplines, karate, judo, before joining their military forces." "Martial arts?" I echoed skeptically. But those are primitive forms of combat compared to what we teach here. PX nodded thoughtfully. True, but they emphasize discipline and adaptability, qualities we might be underestimating in him. I rubbed my chin with one of my secondary arms as I considered this new information. Perhaps Bennett wasn't merely an incompetent recruit, perhaps he had simply approached our training methods differently than expected. Very well, I said finally. Let's give him another chance during tomorrow's training cycle. The following day arrived quickly enough. As soon as we gathered for another round of drills, I decided it was time for Marcus Bennett to face a different kind of challenge, one that would require not just physical skill but mental acuity as well. Today, I announced loudly over the assembled cadets' chatter, we will conduct tactical simulations. Each squad will face scenarios designed to test your strategic thinking under pressure. I watched as excitement rippled through the ranks. Tactical simulations were often where true warriors shone or faltered spectacularly under duress. Bennett, I called out suddenly amidst the preparations. You will lead your squad today. The laughter that erupted from some cadets caught me off guard. They clearly believed it would be an easy victory against someone they deemed inferior. Bennett's expression remained calm as he accepted the challenge without hesitation. A small flicker of determination ignited within me at that moment. As we began the simulations, each squad facing various scenarios involving ambushes and strategic retreats, I observed how Bennett approached each situation differently than his peers had done previously. He utilized terrain features effectively while coordinating with his squad members rather than relying solely on brute strength or speed like many others did. By the end of the session, after several simulated victories against overwhelming odds, I found myself re-evaluating everything I thought I knew about this human recruit named Marcus Bennett. Unexpected challenges. Personal Log Commander Cracks, Head Combat Instructor at Centaur Military Academy. Date, Standard Galactic Year 3457. The first day of training had concluded, and I found myself in a state of perplexity. Marcus Bennett had proven to be an enigma, a human who defied expectations in ways that left me questioning everything I thought I knew about his species. While he struggled with traditional weaponry and hand-to-hand combat, his endurance and adaptability were remarkable. I needed to dig deeper into this anomaly. The following morning, I gathered the cadets in the training arena for a new set of challenges. Today, we will engage in tactical simulations, I announced, my voice echoing off the metallic walls. Each squad will face scenarios designed to test your strategic thinking under pressure. The cadets buzzed with excitement. Tactical simulations were often where true warriors shone or faltered spectacularly under duress. I decided to assign Marcus Bennett to a mixed squad with some of our top cadets, including Rexus and Zara. If he could survive their scrutiny, perhaps he would earn some respect. Squad leaders will be Rexus and Zara, I instructed. You will guide your teams through a series of ambush and evasion scenarios. Remember, the goal is not just to win but to learn from each engagement. As the simulations began, I watched closely from my observation platform. Holographic environments materialized around the cadets, dense forests, urban landscapes, and desolate wastelands designed to challenge their tactical acumen. Rexus led his squad into the forest simulation, utilizing his superior speed and agility to scout ahead. Zara coordinated her team from a distance, using her Nexar neural processing abilities to analyze the terrain and enemy movements. Bennett trailed behind, seemingly out of place among these elite warriors. As they approached an ambush point, Rexus signaled for silence. "We need to flank them," he whispered, his crystalline body shimmering in the dappled light of the simulation. But Bennett was already moving. He darted off to the side, taking an unexpected route through the underbrush that none of us anticipated. "What is he doing?" I muttered under my breath as I watched him disappear from view. Moments later, gunfire erupted from the holographic enemy forces. Rexus and Zara quickly engaged in combat, but Bennett's absence left them vulnerable. Suddenly, a loud explosion echoed through the simulation as Bennett reappeared behind enemy lines, having flanked them successfully. How did he know? PX asked beside me, astonished. Bennett had taken out 2 enemy targets with precise shots from a standard-issue plasma rifle, his earlier struggles forgotten as he capitalized on his tactical insight. The other cadets stared in disbelief as he rejoined Rexus and Zara. "Nice move," Rexus conceded begrudgingly. As the simulation continued, Bennett's instincts shone through. He adapted quickly to changing circumstances, using cover effectively and communicating strategies that surprised even me. His ability to think on his feet was impressive. It was as if he had been trained for this all along. After several rounds of simulations, Bennett's squad emerged victorious more often than not, his contributions proving invaluable despite initial skepticism about his capabilities. "Well done," I called out as they returned to the observation area after completing their final simulation. "You all performed admirably." Bennett stood among them, sweat glistening on his brow but a satisfied smile on his face, a stark contrast to the ridicule he had faced just days before. Perhaps there was more to this human than met the eye. As we prepared for another round of training exercises later that day, I decided it was time for physical assessments again, this time focusing on strength tests that would reveal more about Bennett's potential. "Today," I announced as we gathered in the main arena once more, "we will conduct strength assessments using our advanced lifting apparatuses." The lifting apparatus was a formidable piece of technology designed to measure physical strength against various gravitational forces. Each cadet would attempt to lift weights calibrated for their species' capabilities, an opportunity for Bennett to prove himself further or falter spectacularly. I watched as Rexus stepped up first. He lifted an impressive weight with ease, his crystalline muscles gleaming under the arena lights as he showcased his strength effortlessly. The other cadets followed suit, each displaying their species' unique capabilities. Then it was Bennett's turn. He approached the apparatus with a mix of determination and trepidation, his earlier confidence wavering slightly as he faced what appeared to be an insurmountable challenge. "Remember," I said encouragingly but firmly, "this is not just about lifting weights, it's about understanding your limits." Bennett nodded but didn't respond verbally. Instead, he stepped up to the machine and adjusted the weight settings manually, a move that surprised me given our advanced interfaces were designed for multi-species compatibility. He took a deep breath before attempting to lift what was considered an unliftable weight for humans, a challenge that had left many cadets struggling in previous cycles. The room fell silent as everyone turned their attention toward him. With a grunt of effort, Bennett grasped the handles and began lifting. To my astonishment, he managed to raise it slightly off the ground before faltering, but it was enough to break through preconceived notions about human limitations. The other cadets erupted into cheers and applause, even Rexus looked impressed despite himself. "That was incredible," Zara exclaimed as she approached him after his attempt. "You almost had it." Bennett smiled sheepishly but didn't respond. Instead, he seemed deep in thought as if contemplating what had just happened, a flicker of determination igniting within him once more. As we concluded that day's training session with discussions about strategy and teamwork over dinner in our communal quarters, I couldn't help but feel that Marcus Bennett was beginning to change perceptions, not just among his peers but within myself too. The test of strength. Personal log Commander Cracks, head combat instructor at Centaur Military Academy. Date, Standard Galactic Year 3457. The first day of training had concluded, and I found myself grappling with an unsettling realization. Marcus Bennett was not the weakling I had anticipated. He possessed an uncanny ability to adapt and endure under extreme conditions. However, his performance in combat drills left much to be desired. It was clear that he needed a different kind of challenge, one that would test his physical limits and perhaps reveal hidden strengths. The next day, I gathered the cadets once more in the main training arena, determined to put Bennett to the ultimate test. "Today," I announced, "we will conduct strength assessments using our advanced lifting apparatuses." Each of you will attempt to lift weights calibrated for your species' capabilities. The lifting apparatus was a formidable piece of technology designed to measure physical strength against various gravitational forces. Each cadet would face weights that had been specifically tailored for their species, and I had deliberately set the bar high for Bennett, believing he would struggle under the pressure. As the cadets took turns at the apparatus, Rexus stepped up first. He approached the machine with confidence, his crystalline form glinting under the arena lights. With a swift motion, he grasped the handles and lifted an impressive weight with ease. The other cadets cheered as he showcased his strength effortlessly. Next was Zara, who displayed her own remarkable abilities as a Nexar. She lifted her designated weight with a grace that highlighted her agility and power. Each cadet continued to impress with their feats of strength, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Bennett was about to face an insurmountable challenge. Finally, it was Marcus's turn. He approached the apparatus with a mix of determination and trepidation. The weight he faced was calibrated for an average Andorian, a challenge that had left many cadets struggling in previous cycles. "Remember," I said firmly as he stood before the machine, "this is not just about lifting weights, it's about understanding your limits." Bennett nodded but didn't respond verbally. Instead, he stepped up to the machine and adjusted the weight settings manually, a move that surprised me given our advanced interfaces were designed for multi-species compatibility. He took a deep breath before attempting to lift what was considered an unliftable weight for humans, a challenge that had left many cadets defeated before even trying. The room fell silent as everyone turned their attention toward him. With a grunt of effort, Bennett grasped the handles and began lifting. To my astonishment, he managed to raise it slightly off the ground before faltering, but it was enough to break through preconceived notions about human limitations. The other cadets erupted into cheers and applause, even Rexus looked impressed despite himself. "That was incredible," Zara exclaimed as she approached him after his attempt. "You almost had it." Bennett smiled sheepishly but didn't respond. Instead, he seemed deep in thought as if contemplating what had just happened, a flicker of determination igniting within him once more. As we concluded that day's training session with discussions about strategy and teamwork over dinner in our communal quarters, I couldn't help but feel that Marcus Bennett was beginning to change perceptions, not just among his peers but within myself too. The following week brought new challenges as we delved deeper into combat training. I decided it was time for Marcus to face a series of increasingly difficult scenarios designed to test both his physical prowess and mental acuity. Today, I announced during morning briefing, we will engage in simulated battles against holographic enemies. Each squad will be tasked with defending a designated area while fending off waves of attackers. The cadets buzzed with excitement. This was an opportunity for them to showcase their skills in a more dynamic environment. I paired Marcus with Rexus and Zara once again, hoping that their combined strengths would elevate his performance further. As we entered the simulation chamber, holographic projectors whirred to life, creating a sprawling battlefield filled with obstacles and cover points. The objective was clear: defend your territory at all costs. "Prepare yourselves," I commanded as the simulation began. The first wave of holographic enemies surged forward, robotic warriors programmed for relentless aggression. Rexus immediately took charge, using his speed and agility to engage multiple foes at once while Zara provided support from a distance with her precise shots. Bennett watched intently from behind cover, assessing the situation rather than rushing into battle blindly. As Rexus dispatched enemies left and right, I noticed something remarkable happening. Bennett began moving strategically through the chaos, positioning himself where he could provide support without exposing himself unnecessarily. "Cover me," Rexus shouted as he engaged two enemies simultaneously. Bennett sprang into action without hesitation. He darted out from behind cover and fired at one of the approaching enemies with surprising accuracy. The holographic warrior collapsed under his shot, leaving Rexus free to focus on his remaining opponent. "Nice shot," Rexus called out between strikes. As the waves continued to come, each one more challenging than the last, I observed how Bennett adapted further. He began coordinating with Zara more effectively. They communicated silently through gestures and glances, an unspoken understanding forming between them as they fought side by side. By the end of their session, Bennett had proven himself invaluable, not just as a survivor but as a tactical asset capable of turning the tide in battle alongside stronger allies. As they exited the simulation chamber, Rexus clapped Bennett on the back, a gesture of camaraderie that spoke volumes about how far they had come since their initial encounter. "You did well today," Rexus admitted grudgingly. "I didn't think you'd hold up against those simulations." Bennett smiled broadly at this unexpected praise, a moment that solidified his place among them in ways I hadn't anticipated. However, despite these victories in simulated combat scenarios, doubts lingered in my mind regarding how long this success would last when faced with real threats beyond our training facility. The next day brought yet another challenge, an obstacle course designed specifically for advanced combat training, one that tested not only physical strength but also mental fortitude under duress. As we gathered outside for this new trial, an elaborate setup filled with hurdles, traps, and tactical challenges, I sensed anticipation rippling through my cadets. They were eager to see how Bennett would fare against such demanding conditions. "Listen closely," I called out as we prepared to begin. "This course is not just about speed or strength, it's about strategy. You must think critically while navigating through each obstacle." With that said, I signaled for them all to begin. As they sprinted forward into chaos, the course came alive with holographic projections simulating various threats, laser grids activated randomly along paths, walls shifted unexpectedly, pits opened beneath their feet without warning, all designed to push them beyond their limits while forcing them into split-second decisions regarding survival tactics. Rexus took off like a comet, his crystalline form glinting under bright lights as he navigated each obstacle effortlessly while Zara followed closely behind using her agility to leap over barriers gracefully. But then came Marcus, who approached every challenge methodically rather than rushing headlong into danger like some reckless warrior might do. I watched intently from my vantage point above. The human's movements were deliberate yet fluid as he assessed each obstacle before making calculated choices on how best to proceed. He encountered laser grids first, pausing momentarily before timing his movements perfectly so as not trigger any alarms. Then came shifting walls where others stumbled or hesitated, but not Bennett. He ducked low beneath one wall while swiftly maneuvering around another. With each completed segment, my respect grew further for this human recruit who continued defying expectations at every turn. By lap 3, the course began taking its toll on even our strongest warriors, but Bennett showed no signs of fatigue. His steady breathing indicated remarkable stamina despite increasing difficulty levels throughout. As they neared completion, I couldn't help but feel pride swell within me watching him navigate obstacles like an experienced veteran rather than some inexperienced recruit. Finally crossing over finish line alongside Rexus and Zara, the three stood panting but triumphant. "You're not half bad," Rexus admitted begrudgingly again while wiping sweat from his brow, a hint of camaraderie forming between them now undeniable. "I appreciate that," Bennett replied humbly, his smile genuine as they exchanged nods reflecting newfound respect among comrades forged through shared trials. But even amidst victory celebrations, I couldn't shake off lingering doubts regarding what lay ahead when faced against true adversaries beyond these training walls. The moment of truth. Personal Log Commander Krax, Head Combat Instructor at Centaur Military Academy. Date, Standard Galactic Year 3457. After the previous day's training sessions, I was left with more questions than answers regarding Marcus Bennett. His endurance was extraordinary, and his adaptability in tactical simulations was commendable, yet his performance in combat drills was puzzling. I had never encountered a recruit who could endure extreme physical challenges while simultaneously failing to engage effectively in combat. It was time for a decisive test, a moment that would reveal whether Bennett could truly hold his own in our rigorous training program. I gathered the cadets in the main arena once again, this time with a palpable sense of anticipation hanging in the air. Today, I announced, we will conduct the ultimate test of strength and skill, the Titan Cannon Challenge. The Titan Cannon was a massive piece of technology designed to measure physical strength and combat prowess. It consisted of an enormous alien artifact that had been deemed unliftable by most species due to its sheer weight and gravitational properties. The challenge was simple: each cadet would attempt to lift the Titan Cannon from its pedestal and hold it aloft for as long as possible. This is not just a test of brute strength, I explained. It requires coordination, focus, and an understanding of your own limits. Many have tried to lift it, few have succeeded. The cadets exchanged glances filled with excitement and trepidation. They knew that this challenge would push them to their limits, but they were also eager to see how Bennett would fare against such a daunting task. I began calling the cadets forward one by one. Rexus stepped up first, his crystalline form shimmering as he approached the Titan Cannon. With a deep breath, he grasped the handles and lifted with all his might. The artifact trembled slightly but remained firmly anchored to its pedestal. "Come on, Rexus!" Zara cheered from the sidelines. "You can do it." Rexus strained against the weight, his muscles bulging as he fought to lift it higher. After several grueling moments, he managed to raise it just above waist height before collapsing under its weight. The crowd erupted into applause, acknowledging his effort even though he hadn't succeeded in holding it aloft. Next up was Zara, who approached with her characteristic grace. She positioned herself carefully and attempted to lift the Titan Cannon using her agility and finesse rather than brute strength. For a brief moment, it seemed as though she might succeed. She lifted it slightly before her legs buckled beneath her, forcing her to relinquish control. The crowd cheered again, but I could see that their excitement was tinged with curiosity about how Bennett would perform. Would he rise to the occasion or falter like so many before him? Finally, it was Marcus's turn. He stepped forward with a calm demeanor that belied the challenge ahead of him. As he approached the Titan Cannon, I noticed that his heart rate remained steady, remarkably so for someone facing such an intimidating task. "Remember," I said firmly as he positioned himself before the artifact, "this is not just about strength, it's about understanding your limits." Bennett nodded but didn't respond verbally. Instead, he grasped the handles with both hands and took a deep breath. The crowd fell silent as they watched him prepare for what many believed would be an embarrassing failure. With a grunt of effort, Bennett began to lift the Titan Cannon. To my astonishment, it budged slightly off its pedestal, an achievement that sent ripples of disbelief through the assembled cadets. "Is he actually lifting it?" PX whispered beside me, eyes wide with surprise. Bennett continued to strain against the weight, his muscles tensing as he fought to hold it aloft. Slowly but surely, he raised it higher, higher than any human had ever managed before in our academy's history. The crowd erupted into cheers as Bennett managed to stabilize the artifact above his head, a feat that left everyone in awe. He held it there for several heart-stopping seconds, sweat dripped from his brow as he focused intently on maintaining control. "Keep going," Zara shouted encouragingly from the sidelines. But then something shifted. The strain began to show on Bennett's face as he fought against gravity's relentless pull. His arms trembled under the weight, and I could see fatigue creeping in. "Focus. You can do this," I shouted, trying to instill confidence in him despite my own growing concern. With one final push of effort, Bennett strained against the Titan Cannon, but ultimately succumbed to its weight after holding it aloft for an impressive duration. He collapsed backward onto the training floor as the artifact thudded back into place with a resounding echo. The arena erupted into applause, cadets cheering wildly for Bennett's remarkable achievement despite not fully succeeding in lifting it permanently. Rexus approached him first, clapping him on the back with genuine admiration. "You did better than any human before you," Rexus admitted begrudgingly but sincerely. Bennett lay on the floor panting heavily but smiling broadly, a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration evident on his face. For the first time since his arrival at Centaur Academy, he had earned respect among his peers, a transformation that had been hard-won through trials and tribulations. As they helped him up from the ground, Zara beaming with pride, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction wash over me too. Perhaps this human recruit wasn't just an anomaly after all, maybe he truly belonged among us. As we concluded our training session for the day, I gathered my thoughts while watching Bennett interact with his fellow cadets. They were no longer mocking him but instead treating him as one of their own, a comrade forged through shared struggles and victories alike. But even amidst these newfound friendships, I couldn't shake off lingering doubts regarding what lay ahead when faced against true adversaries beyond these training walls.